Hey folks, it's Ray with Taste Radio. Right now, I am supremely honored to be sitting down with Bill Creelman and Dave Burwick, the founder and CEO, respectively, of Spindrift. Bill, how are you?
I'm well, Ray. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, good to see you. How are things?
Good to see you, Ray. Things are going great.
Outstanding. Were you both at Expo West?
We were.
Yep, we were.
I missed you both. I'm sorry. But I did see Spindrift everywhere, especially on Hall E. You guys had a huge display out there. With you. How many cans of the Spindrift soda did you hand out?
Have we done the math yet?
I think it's over, I'm guessing over 7,000 or 8,000.
7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team did a great job.
I would think most people were finishing the cans because what you are making is pretty darn fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to see the product out in the world, especially having worked on it, in secrecy for months and months and months. So yeah, and the reaction was really exciting too.
Yeah, innovation. I guess it's sort of a retro innovation in some ways. Where this idea came about and the desire and decision to get back into the soda category.
You would uniquely know just because we talked all, during the growth of Spindrift, just, what the journey is that we've been on. But maybe just to remind the audience, we started as Spindrift Soda in 2010, and we were a refrigerated $3 single serve soda.
Long neck glass bottles.
Long neck glass bottles,
Yeah.
sold through 75 produce distributors, mostly into restaurants, from 2010 to 2016. And then famously, we sat down with you in 2017 and declared that we were getting out of that business because we wanted to challenge ourselves to make a product that didn't have sugar, which is what the original soda had, didn't have synthetic natural flavors and natural colors. And that's exactly what we did. We focused on building a sparkling water format using real ingredients. And so in the end of 2013, beginning of the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, the team came up with this idea of what if we went back to that original kind of intensity of product and format, knowing now everything we've learned over the last 14 years, what would it be like if we revisited that intensity level and really kind of turned Spindrift up to 11, Mm-hmm. And that's what they did. These products are taking this incredible knowledge that we've developed, the supply chain that we didn't really have figured out. We've learned so much about sourcing and seasonality and fruit and temperature and time that we could apply all of that learning now to this product. And I would argue it's a better product than we made way back when. And it adheres to all the same principles of just sparkling water and real ingredients. So it's been incredibly exciting for us. And I think, a real kind of probably the most bold innovation we've ever done, just because it really pushes the limits of really what Spindrift uniquely is, which is a very simple proposition, but this sort of incredible dimension of flavor without adding a ton of sweetness.
You do make great products. I just had a sip of your Shirley Temple, and you had mentioned that this was a huge hit at Expo West. I imagine there were a lot of people drinking it as a refreshment beverage, but also as looking at it as a non-alc cocktail or an alcohol analog. And it is something where I feel like this does remind me, and I do have that kind of memory of when you launched in 2010 and the feeling I got when I was tasting these sodas and they weren't syrupy. You could taste the real fruit in there. The carbonation was spot on. I do feel like these are a great representation of what you originally intended. Dave, when you and I spoke last, you were the CEO of Boston Beer Company, and I remember at the time, hard seltzer was the craze, almost in the same way that Better For You soda is a craze right now in non-alc. And I had asked you if Truly could that would be the Boston Beer Company hard seltzer Truly, could be a brand that was potentially bigger than Sam Adams. Sam Adams being the flagship beer of Boston Beer Company. And when I think about this soda, I know it's still early. It's what, you're 2-3 weeks in at this point, not even. I wonder if the soda, you think, could be the new flagship line for Spindrift, given what we're seeing in this space, in this soda space right now.
I wish you hadn't brought up Truly.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. By the way, Truly became a $1 billion business, so
Sure.
about 3x the size of Samuel Adams.
Yep.
I mean, who knows? I think it's a great product. It's really early for us to say, but I think it hits a sweet spot right now, which is people the same reason that sparkling does. People are looking for healthy ingredients, better drinking. I think consumers always like flavor. I mean, flavor is really important, and drinkability is really important. And I think what Bill and company have done to bring this to life is tremendous. I think it delivers on all that, and I think importantly, this is it's a brand that really knows what it's about, and it kind of sticks to sort of its authentic roots. And I think that helps with consumers, because consumers can sense that when it's real and it hasn't been corrupted. And I tell you, working at a big company like Pepsi, which is a wonderful place, by the way, the risk always is that the purity of brands become corrupted by all the succession of people that come through and run the brands, because their goals might be different than the long-term goals that the brand might have, if you will. This is one that's never been corrupted. It's all like there's a through line, as Bill said, from the beginning in 2010 to where we are now with this product. So could it be bigger? Well, we hope so. That would be wonderful if it is, but I don't think we're not necessarily betting on that. We're just going to take it one step at a time.
You have 3 lines of products now. You have your hard seltzer, you have the soda line, you have your flagship sparkling water line. How do you know where to emphasize your time and resources at this point?
I think, believe it or not, even though we've been doing this for 14 plus years, it's still early days for real ingredients in beverages. And what's so exciting to me is that it feels like real ingredients have never been more relevant than they are today. You have to remember, when we started in sparkling water, every other product was the same. It was clear. It didn't have, fruit on the back of the label. Like, it just was, a relatively big category with very little differentiation. And almost everything we've done is really against this idea of let's bring real ingredients to people and help them understand what it is. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned the 3 product lines we're in today. I would argue, the mocktails is another category that we've extended into. The teas is another area. It's really all with the same goal. It's bringing real ingredients to consumers, many of whom have never had them in beverages, mm-hmm. at least, sort of single strength, unprocessed, like what real fruit actually tastes like. And so when we sat down with you guys a couple of years ago, we kind of announced that this is the direction we were going to be going in. We thought there was an opportunity for real ingredients to show up in places where real ingredients weren't, mm-hmm. or previously had not been. And that's really what you're seeing us do now as we launch into soda and continue to drive our business in these other areas. So I think when we think about resource allocation or where we're going to be spending our time, we really frame it more as, how can we help bring more people into real ingredients as a category almost, or as like a subset, and kind of direct our time and energy through that lens. And to me, what's interesting and exciting about soda, we've historically had a very strong food service business, for instance. We have a number of food service customers that, previously worked with us on our soda line. They were very excited, big, kind of big acquirers, had it on the menu, et cetera. And this is a chance now to bring real ingredients to those customers again, and help, kind of help move them down the real ingredient pipeline.
Yeah, I would agree that real ingredients is a major through line for Spindrift. But as a consumer, I would say that the reason I love Spindrift is because it's a premium product. Everything that you make has a premium vibe to it. And, even the prices are more premium. And a higher priced item you would expect to be a better product. I think the premium nature of what you do helps on a lot of fronts, and I think on the retail front as well. Dave, if you could talk about that, at a time when better for you sodas are becoming so ubiquitous that you would think prices are going to come down. How do you maintain that positioning in a way that represents Spindrift and it's the way it's been portrayed historically?
I think just in general, for years at Pepsi, we tried to come up with a premium brand or a brand that could charge more money, and it just has not happened in soft drinks historically. It's because of the competitive nature, that's part of it, and pricing on a real basis has probably declined still over the years. I think what's really special about this new modern soda subsegment, or whatever you want to call it, is that it's for the first time there are premium price points that are sticking in the category, and I think it's good for everybody. I think it's good for retailers for sure, and it's good for the manufacturers and the producers as well. And I think credit to Olipop, Poppy, Spindrift, and maybe S. Pellegrino, Perrier, some of these other brands, Topo Chico to a certain extent, that can create a higher price ceiling. I think I think it's real, and I think it's going to stick because consumers, as you said, are willing. They recognize premium when they see it, and they're willing to pay more for it. And the people who are putting the products out there are very disciplined about what they want to get for the product, and also the cost to produce it is higher as well. So that's certainly driving some of it. But I think it's great for the category actually to see that.
Yeah, and I think I've never really seen Spindrift discounted. I've never seen it in a place where it's like $1 a can or even $1.50 a can. And that's no knock on Spindrift. I think it's a brilliant strategy to maintain, again, that positioning such that people don't think of you as being a discounted brand. In fact, we see a lot of that right now in sparkling water, where emerging brands have put themselves in a difficult spot by discounting to $1, $1.50 when they were once, say, $3, $3.50. It's hard, though, I think, to expand and to get those velocities, perhaps, that people are expecting, investors might be expecting you to get when you do have that premium price. How do you balance the two? How do you consider the dual nature of price and velocity, Bill?
Well, we've just had to focus on the part of the business that we believe the space we uniquely fill, and our product is expensive to make. When you fresh squeeze ingredients and you use single strength ingredients, like, there's no getting around the fact that that's going to be a more expensive process. Our ingredients are cold chain. We move them cold to our production facilities. So I guess in many ways, like, just discounting was never really going to be a strategy because of the inherent, cost in the ingredients. I think though that more what's interesting to us is value. Like, is there value there when you take an unprocessed ingredient and give them the kind of taste profile and the rounded taste profile of what a orange that you just cut open and you're sort of having as a slice, or as fresh fruit, and I think what we have always understood is that word of mouth is going to be our most important and most effective strategy. People try Spindrift, it's different, they like it, they tell a friend. That's a very patient strategy. It is not, kind of buying front of store and then crossing your fingers. But it was always the strategy that we felt was the most effective for our brand, just given how different it was relative to everything else in the set.
Switching gears for a sec, sugar. Sugar has always been something that is top of mind for consumers, or maybe not always, but certainly in the last 10 years, where there's been this hey, sugar is completely evil, and now it's moved to a place where a little bit of sugar is fine. Sugar has always been a question about Spindrift, and I'm looking at that 2017 article and talking about your complete transition from soda to sparkling water. And you had said at the time, Bill, it's removed the last caveat. It's real fruit and water and bubbles. That's it. You've embraced the fact that sugar can be a fair thing for consumers. That's something that consumers want at this point. How much does that impact, I guess, the overall strategy? How do you think about sugar in the context of the evolution of Spindrift at this point?
Well, we've stayed, that our soda even now doesn't have any added sugar.
And I'm going to have some of your strawberry shortcake, which would you would think is a pretty sweet product, but let's try it here.
I think, so imagine when we entered the sparkling water category, it was a category filled with zeros. And when you have real fruit, it cannot have zeros. I mean, literally, real fruit has some de minimis amount of calories. So we had to really embrace that and really explain why real fruit has calories and products without real fruit don't. And that is quite a challenge, especially as a single brand, out there really advocating for that point of view. The new product is that exact same proposition, just 2, 3, 4 times the amount of real fruit. So really our position on real ingredients and then the kind of resulting calories or sugar really hasn't changed. I would say, I think what we would always say about our product, and especially now, I think this is true in the soda category, is that we're not relying on sweetness. We're really relying on dimension of flavor. Mm-hmm. What single strength ingredients give you uniquely is a little sweet, a little tart, a little body, some sweetness, kind of traditional sugar, that's traditional soda intensity, but a lot more dimension of flavor. And that's why you don't miss the sugar. So I actually think now more than ever, sugar, is we now know sugar can accelerate, things in your body that you don't necessarily want. We know a lot more about the effects of sugar. So I think we're more, as Dave said, like we know ourselves so well now that it's much more about, kind of continuing to defend our proposition than necessarily kind of reinventing or reimagining it now as we expand.
Another ingredient that seems to be top of mind for a lot of consumers, well, it's an ingredient set, that of functional ingredients. And you, Spindrift, famously, or in some cases infamously, said we are not all about those functional ingredients. So we're not a probiotic, prebiotic. We're not a gut health brand.
We really embrace real ingredients. And in some cases, there's this function, right? Our tea has a little bit of caffeine in it. We obviously have a spiked line that has a little bit of alcohol in it.
The original function, right?
But it all, it's all derived from the ingredients upstream that you could grow in your garden, or you could make a meal with. And so, this is like very personal to us, this idea of using real ingredients, this idea of using, less processed ingredients. I actually think, though, that, and I don't know, I think we all would define function a little bit differently, but I would argue that when you make a meal from scratch at home versus buying a TV dinner, even though you're getting this exact same ingredients, the making it from scratch at home is a little bit better for you. Mm-hmm. It has, you can, the actual, kind of bits in the food and the way it's less processed yields a better product. It tastes better, I would argue, but also I think you can digest it easier. And I think that's really what we're espousing here, and is this idea that we're, when you start with a whole orange or a whole lemon and can kind of follow it all the way through to the beverage you drink, there's inherently, it's going to taste better and it's going to feel better. And that is something that we are unwavering on.
I think one of the unspoken words in our industry And I don't know why, because it is the biggest part of our industry is refreshment, right? I mean, people drink beverages typically for refreshment. You have billions and billions of beverages sold every day because people are thirsty and they want something delicious to drink. And that part of Spindrift's trajectory, I think, is an important one. But how do you talk to people about refreshment? How do you talk to people about the fact that this is going to be a delicious product and doesn't need to be anything more than that, especially nowadays when everyone's like, oh, this has to have this or that in it?
Well, again, I guess, we believe that the real ingredient revolution in beverage is just starting. And so when we talk about innovation or where we want to extend into, we really think about what categories are most in need of a proposition like Spindrift. And then we think about that need state. So here with the soda, we really feel like pairing with food is what we can uniquely bring, certainly refreshing, but also fulfilling. If you look back at when, we started, we were, a favorite of many of, flatbread pizza in Somerville, or the flatbread pizza chain, or burrito, or, we worked with Wahlburgers when they launched in the early days, way back when. And those are all occasions that I think are better suited to a fuller flavored product, albeit, still something that is, matching. It should match in flavor intensity, but also ingredients. And what always struck me is when you go into a great pizza place or a great burger joint, like you can watch them make the ingredients behind the counter. You can see them rolling the dough and putting the toppings on. We wanted to have a soda or proposition that kind of matched that. So I think we continue to be very intentional about where we take this kind of point of difference of ours that's taken us almost 10 years to figure out. And so I think we still believe the long runway here for Spindrift or other brands is going to be taking real ingredients and kind of matching up with the experience, that it's best suited for.
Well, yeah. The occasion, however, could be a bit of a problem, I think, and this is just me talking, given that you have two really delicious product lines now, and you kind of have to weigh where one belongs and the other doesn't necessarily, or where one belongs and the other one, say, fits better. I'm sipping on this orange cream float, which is outstanding. Really, really good. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if I were working for Spindrift, how would I figure out where this belongs versus just your orange mango sparkling water? And is that a dilemma for you? I mean, is the question of cannibalization a concern for Spindrift at this point?
Luckily, we've been in both categories, right? So we were in soda for 7 years, and now we've been in sparkling water for about 7 years.
Albeit at a very different part of your journey.
Very different part of our journey. Yeah. But we learned a lot. We were able to kind of see where those categories overlap, so where the consumer overlaps or where the retailers overlap, and then where they're different. And I think it's fair to say there's going to be occasions where they're similar, but we also know when we got out of the soda business that there are a whole bunch of customers that now could no longer find the brand. And I think the need hasn't changed. There's still, particularly that with food occasion, in our opinion, is probably better suited for a more intense flavor. But I think we have that pretty, well lit line for that. I mean, red wine is a great example. Like that tends to pair with a specific occasion that's different than rosé or white wine. And so we're very happy for the consumer to come in and meet us at whatever level of intensity they want. We don't want to be too prescriptive about that. But as Dave mentioned, we're being very targeted with where we go with this product, because we really want to make sure, for us, the ideal is obviously to bring consumers in that with food occasion that right now is not purchasing Spindrift because it doesn't deliver the flavor intensity yet that they were looking for.
Intentional is good. Ambition is really good if you're an entrepreneur or someone who's running a beverage company that seems to be on fire like Spindrift is right now. I think ambition can sometimes get away from people. I remember I once spoke with Ben Weiss, who's the founder of a brand called Bai. And Bai's was famously sold to Dr. Pepper Snapple, or Keurig Dr. Pepper, for $1.7 billion. I think this was in 2017. And Ben at the time had told me, he's like, we don't, look at ourselves as the next vitamin water. We're the next Coke. We're the new Coke. And of course, there was a chuckle and, a wry smile there on my half. Ben was deadly serious, actually. But, Dave, how does ambition fit into your strategy? And on the one hand, you've got these great product lines and you want to be intentional about and specific about how you position them and where they're sold. On the other hand, I can see these and say, hey, well, the sky's the limit for what you can do here. How do you think about and weigh ambition versus intentionality?
If intentionality is followed correctly, then ambition is sort of achieved, if you will. So I think continue to do what we're doing. I think there's more categories to go into with real ingredients and real fruit that we could redefine, if you will. And I think we just need to do that at the right pace and the right way. And ultimately, the ambition will be achieved. Personally, I think this is a $1 billion business and beyond. It is. But we don't, I don't wake up in the morning. It's only like week 3. But I don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, how quickly can we become a $1 billion business? I think, hey, how successful can we make soda? And to your point, where's it going to fit out in consumers' choices? How are they going to consume it? What occasions? How do we separate that from sparkling? How do we best reach that consumer? Should we be targeting modern soda drinkers or traditional soda drinkers or both? So I think it's great to have the ambition, but I think you get there by doing all the right, with not focusing on that every day, just focusing on what's right in front of you. And I think, again, this is a brand that is like, it's from Bill and the team. It's like it's never wavered from its intentionality, if you will. And I think that's really, today's world, people see that, they just understand it, and I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think we just got to keep following that same path, and we're going to get there. And actually, I joined because I'm so excited about. There's so few brands in any category that have that kind of sanctity to it. That it's really super exciting to be a part of this and help the team kind of achieve their ambitions. And again, I think this thing is got a lot of runway ahead of it.
You've mentioned a number of times that Real Ingredients is a platform with which you can innovate into multiple different beverage categories. I think when you're considering new product development, you don't want to over-innovate. You want to be very focused on what you have in front of you, but be cognizant about the potential for the brand. I don't know. I sometimes wonder about innovation as being a big trap for a lot of brands. Bill, how have you considered innovation over the years and timing in particular as it relates to the soda line?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on that, and in general, if you think about, let's say we're in 4 to 5 product lines over 15 years, it's about every 2 or 3 years that we feel like we're kind of ready to come out with something different and unique. I think the difference is really, as I've mentioned already, like it's about showing the versatility of Real Ingredients and trying to present in a unique way for consumers that may not yet have moved into Spindrift. So, we're about 5% household penetration today. We're, 60 ACV. Like we've been pretty consistently and intentionally growing the brand. And that's always been a foundation really of the business from the beginning. And so I think we would love to continue to expand into lots of different occasions as long as we can bring something unique. That's the thing that to me is really important. I think our drifter community has come to expect that from us. You don't see all of the innovations we haven't done because they don't meet that criteria. And so, that's I think as long as we continue to stay true to that, I think we'll be okay.
Spindrift milk however, won't be coming out anytime
We'll
soon.
never say never, but I think people have done milk already as many ways as probably can be done.
Well, Bill, the question I was going to ask you after Dave talked about ambition is your personal journey in this beverage space. As we've talked about, the founder of a brand called Stirrings, which you successfully exited, and now with Spindrift, bringing the brand and getting the brand to this point. I think in our article about the investment from Gryphon Investors, Spindrift was doing $275 million according to Nielsen IQ data, which I imagine doesn't include a lot of other revenue that the brand is bringing in. So, I mean, what an accomplishment. What an incredible thing to be able to build a brand to this point. Are you satisfied? I mean, are you happy with what you've done to this point? I mean, how do you think about your personal ambition and where you go from here as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, we're really excited about partnering with Gryphon. And honestly, I've known Dave for 10 years, and I couldn't be happier about having him as really the lead in this next stage of the journey. The move to bring in Gryphon as a partner was really because of how excited we are, and because we feel like Real Ingredients are having a moment unlike anything that I've felt or experienced in the previous 14 years leading in. I think it's and so when we thought about our options as a business, as a team, we all really decided that we wanted to really bring in partners that could help us with growth. And that's really no different than how we had thought about partners over the years. If you kind of go back and look, we didn't get to the size we're at alone. I didn't do it by myself. It was bringing in a great team. It was bringing in amazing investors, all of whom have contributed at different times and in really important ways. And I think Gryphon, with their experience in the category, with Dave, with his experience at Pete's or at Pepsi or Sam Adams, all of that experience we're going to need because beverage isn't getting any less competitive. And so, I think we really feel kind of armed and ready now for the next stage of growth in a way that's super exciting to me.
Super exciting. But are you happy?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I pinch myself every day. I mean, I think, I wish I could tell you that I had imagined all those years ago, in Charlestown with glass soda bottles, that we thought that this category would break the way that it did and that our innovation would be recognized the way that it has. But you have no way of betting. I mean, there's too many chances for these businesses to get off the rails. And so to be here today, in the position we're in, I'm thrilled. And the most surprising thing for me is just feeling like there's just, so far to go. And I think it just has to do with the fact that beverage has been so far behind all these big food categories, which have largely had Real Ingredients and kind of better for you already, kind of come in and change. Think about Ben & Jerry's or Annie's or Stonyfield Yogurt. I mean, these iconic brands that have been around now. I think that's the era we're in for beverage. And so with Dave and Gryphon and our team, I think we can, become one of those iconic brands that really ushered in a new era. But that takes time. And that's really what, the position we feel we're in now.
Dave, how do you see your role in the company now as CEO? I know you've talked about the potential for the brand and the excitement that you feel about its runway going from here. You've worked with a founder in the past in Jim Cook, but a kind of a different situation in that Sam Adams, Boston Beer Company, was a publicly traded company. Spindrift is still privately held. When you're thinking about working with Bill and leading the company, what are your priorities? What do you feel like is most important at this point, especially given your experience working with different companies across the industry and with iconic founders like a Jim Cook or a Bill Creelman?
Well, I mean, first of all, feel extremely privileged to have this opportunity to work with Bill and the team. I will say right away that I love being working in a private company versus public, and I think, and the big thing really to me is that, and we use Gryphon as example as our partners in this. I think you have a board and a sponsor, if you will, that actually is all in it with you, and they provide a lot of value. They do. And if they didn't, they wouldn't be around. And I think that you feel like you get the support, a broader network of support and a capability and expertise that you can actually put to use. So there's a bigger, more supportive team. In a private company or public company, you're kind of out there on your own, right? And I mean, you're not getting, the guys at Fidelity would call me. They're great, by the way, but they're not giving me advice on how to run the business necessarily. But I need that. I want that. And for me, I think my number one priority is there are 203 people who work at Spindrift or thereabouts. It's like getting the most out of every one of them. For me, that's what I love to do is how do you, and I've talked about leadership is really, it's the ability to take the power within you or transfer that power within you, that power meaning really your experience, your knowledge base to those around you to make them better. And I'm deeply passionate about that, and I really think that there's a great group of people here. And for me, the best thing I can do is help people really achieve their full potential as members of the drifter community, if you will, and also as humans. And that's what I want to do. And that's job number one. Number two is there are many choices to make to grow the business. And I think having a little bit of dialogue and even conflict around how do we do it. And you referenced before, how much you innovate versus not innovate. What's the pace of that innovation? How do you support the brands? How do you also attack some of the operational challenges we've had with the high cost of ingredients and freight and all the rest? I'm just another voice to help kind of make the right choices, help the team come together, make the right choices, because that's so important to do that. And we're lucky to have many different pathways we can take, but that can also be challenging to make the right choice. And the last thing I'd say, which I think is really exciting, is that I've often been a part of businesses. Most businesses are like this, and maybe you were alluding to this before too, where the growth has to come from innovation. There's so much pressure to innovate. Right? Consumers want it, retailers want it. Nobody cares about the long-term health of your business. That's why they just want something now. Give me something now, whether it's the consumer, the retailer.
We're guilty of that too over here at BevNet.
Depending on your business, it could be the wholesaler, whoever it is. And I think we're at a place now where there's so much growth just on the base business. So part of what I want to do is help, how do we maximize the base business, if you will, the core sparkling business? And Bill referenced 5 or 6% household penetration, 60% ACV. There's a lot of upside there. If we just focus on that, we still get a lot of growth. And that's a great thing. And then there's the innovation is really complementary. And you're not forced to make decisions to innovate either too quickly or in the wrong way, because you have to have the volume, you have to have the business. And I've been in that situation too many times where you're just throwing a lot of innovation out there. And yeah, it's fun, it's interesting, but then you live and die by that. And basically, 15 to 20% of innovation actually succeeds. So the balance is, we have a great balance, and part of what I want to do is help keep the balance. Keep that balance. Don't forget about the core. At the same time, make sure that we are not too slow and not too fast. Also, in innovating and taking the real ingredient, credentials of this brand and bring it into other categories, because it's so tempting. There's I could list 10 different ideas of where we could go. Probably not milk. Maybe a fruit smoothie one day.
Okay.
But with high protein. But
I'm gonna hold you to that, Dave.
Yeah.
So you just said it. So
but I think there's so many. But then, and it's such a great place to be. So again, it's making the right choices. How do we around our opportunities to grow and growing it in a way that's sustainable and durable. And but also, to me, back to where I started, it all starts with the people, the team, and getting a team that can work together really well and get stuff done. That is, it's really hard today in most companies for many reasons. I think we have a great culture, and we can do that, and I want to try to supercharge that as much as I can.
Yeah, and I think the opportunity also comes from having a solid foundation that's based in fundamentals and relationships. I don't know how many times we've talked about fundamentals on this podcast and the importance of a healthy gross margin and a strong supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not necessarily easy. A lot of times it's easier said than done because of pricing pressures, because of just changing consumer wins and how people, in what people want and what ingredients they want. So how do you think about the long-term viability of a brand, and how did you think about it, say, in 2013 versus 2025? Bill, I mean, is everything a little bit easier for you now that you've been in it for a while?
Well, I don't know that it's ever easy. I mean, these categories move so quickly. I think, just knowing who we are helps. And a lot of the work we've been doing is really, doubling down on continuing to, optimize. So, we buy a lot of single strength ingredients around the US primarily. Do we have the right partners? Can we continue to improve their not just quality, but their entire kind of way of going to market? And then is there savings for them and for us that we can continue to help improve the product and improve our cost base? I don't think there's ever going to be a time in our business, and probably even in the larger brands like Coke and Pepsi, where you're not having those conversations. Beverages is about a lot of things, but the only way to really build a successful business is to do one thing and do it over and over and over and over again. And that's that is really the job. In many ways, Spindrift was an interesting idea in 2013, but it wasn't an efficient business. And I think, again, because of our team, because, of our focus on a relatively narrow range of products, that's allowed us, I think, to get better and better. But we still have a long way to go. And so, as Dave mentioned, like we spend 80% of our time really on driving kind of the core business and making sure the product is amazing and getting everywhere it needs to be. And then the balance is really about kind of what's next and where can we go from here?
Back in 2013, when you were not an efficient business, I imagine there were a lot of sleepless nights and wondering if this thing was actually going to work. What kept you going?
I think just my belief. I like to tell people that my Saturdays are really not much different than my Tuesdays, because I for better or worse, maybe think about kind of food and ingredients and what I'm having for dinner on Saturday night, kind of tends to be how I start my day. And so I just assume that if I was as interested in ingredients as I am, there must be other people out there that have that same passion. And I'd always felt like there just wasn't a product that really met that standard, something you would, kind of make in your kitchen if you were having friends over for dinner. Like that level of product is something that we've always strived for. So even in our darkest hours, and we've had, many, many, many challenges over the years, I think we always went back to just how proud we are of the product, and the belief that if we could just get people to try it and understand a little bit about our starting point, that they would be excited about our proposition. It doesn't mean you necessarily are going to be a Spindrift drinker, but at least appreciate what we stand for in these big crowded categories that have a lot of kind of different things they're trying to sell you.
I remember an entrepreneur once telling me that running a beverage brand is like being on the edge of a sword, where on one side it could be epic failure, on the other side it could be remarkable success, and you're always teetering on that line. In those dark days and those dark challenges, where was the most difficult part? What was the most difficult experience of building this brand? And was it a specific moment, or is it just something that's always been difficult for you?
Well, I think it's not making compromises. I think where these brands can, or I shouldn't generalize, but just in our brand, Spindrift and maybe Stirrings before, you are constantly being asked to make decisions that could compromise, whether it's the brand integrity, the ingredient integrity.
Who's asking you these
the
questions?
Pricing, it's consumers or retailers or just, investors. This is an expensive category, beverage. It's incredibly competitive. I think it moves, other than maybe fashion, it moves faster than any other CPG category. And so, man, you're just always, every day, you're making 100 decisions that could sort of swing the momentum one way or the other. And very often the short-term decision is in conflict with the long-term benefit. And, I think for me, having done it now for a number of years, I was able to have that perspective. I think we generally have avoided the short-term, price incentive you mentioned earlier in favor of no, let's maintain the integrity of the brand and make sure that, we live to fight another day. And why I'm so excited 14 years later is because I think we're actually finally, in many ways, seeing the real benefit of those hard short-term decisions compounded, many of them stacked up, where, we really, I think, are the success we're seeing now in a lot of ways were decisions that were made 5-8 years ago that, have just taken time to kind of surface. So, I think this is going to be just such a neat time for all of us, to really experience what this point of difference that we've developed can mean. If you go around the world, real ingredients are just pretty, they're much better understood than they are in the U.S. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, we're just kind of leveling up with, where, real ingredients have kind of been. And so, that's what gets me really excited.
I've kept you here a lot longer than I said I would, and I'm sure your team is going to be like, that POS Ray, he said this, and then he said this, and now we're doing this. And so I can't thank you guys enough for being here. Thank you so much. I know you're only, a couple blocks away from us, and I would love to have you back anytime you're available. But this has been such a great conversation, and one that I think our audience is going to get a lot out of. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for documenting the journey. I think as I mentioned, I went back and read, our work together, and starting all the way back in 2010 forward. So, yeah, really grateful for your continued coverage and support.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? I've been here for 14 years. You've been at this for 15 years, and here we are still doing our thing.
That's right. Maybe we're the crazy ones. I'm not sure.
I would put myself in that category for sure. In any case, Bill, Dave, thank you once again. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks a lot.